The story opened with a sudden, unexpected dispute when the hero party's leader, Nardo, ordered our protagonist, Eris Falry, banished immediately. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, they wondered if this was some kind of a prank. Nardo's visible anger made it clear there was no trick, and he wanted Eris out of his sight immediately. Witnesses at the scene watched the heated exchange and wondered what had happened. They kept their distance, refusing to get drawn into the conflict, and left quickly before it escalated. They further asserted that the party did not need such a burden, in a fit of uncontrollable fury. Nardo even accused Eris of hogging experience points. In this world, defeating monsters gave each person experience points that increased their strength, and those points were split evenly among party members. Eris realized they had kicked him out just to get more XP for themselves. When Eris tried to explain, Nardo ignored his words, declared the dismissal final, and harshly ordered him to leave. The other members kept their distance too, which suggested he had only partly read the room. Before he left for good, Eris asked one last time whether they were truly okay with him leaving the hero party. They almost called him persistent, celebrating that they would finally be free of a deadweight like him. Hazure left and strolled onward. It shouldn't have needed an explanation. Clearly, the party depended on his enchantments to function, but they had dismissed him without understanding. For a long time he believed they would come back to fetch him, looking worried, but now he was determined not to go back. Eris had joined the hero party to avenge his family taken by the demon lord and to prevent further disaster. Now outside the party, his immediate priority was to get his life back on track. Thinking about his future, he decided to get an adventurer's license. Soon he reached a guild house and walked up to the receptionist, who kindly offered to help her. Upon his arrest, they asked him to become an adventurer. After checking the time, she told him he had arrived just in time for the exam and then asked how he wished to proceed. He said he would like to take the exam right away if possible. She handed him a registration form to fill out right away. He quickly wrote his name and profession. An enchanter, he helped party members with enhancement magic, a skill he was born with. As she scanned the finished form, she hesitantly asked if he was part of the hero party. Eris thought about how quickly she had recognized him just from his name and job. Although he knew it would cause trouble if word got out that he had been expelled from the hero party. Acting quickly, Eris denied any connection, saying the name was common and he had nothing to do with the hero party. To distract her, he asked about the exam content. There were 4 tests in total, she explained. 4 tests: magic power, target practice, practical, and final. She explained that he had to pass all 4. He was allowed unlimited attempts and was wished luck. She led him to the test venue. She led him to the room reserved for the magic power test. This was Yuusha's first time having his magic power measured since joining the hero party, and he felt confident he would pass. A single polished crystal sat on a mount atop a pedestal in the room, and she placed her hand on it. She demonstrated the test procedure. Touching the crystal would absorb magic and reveal his power level. A brighter glow meant more magical power. A dimmer glow meant less. The crystal glowed faintly beneath her hand. Eris asked about the passing score. It was beyond her current magical strength, but if she made it just a bit brighter, it would count as a pass. Not an adventurer, she said she could manage a fair amount of magic, suggesting it shouldn't be too hard for him. Eris placed a firm hand on the crystal and decided to try it anyway. On his touch, the surface burst into a brilliant glow. The flash briefly blinded the receptionist. Eris assumed the bright light meant he had passed the test. When he turned to ask the receptionist about his result, her legs gave way and she fell, and he wondered if he had somehow messed something up. Apologizing quickly for her unexpected reaction, she admitted she had never seen anything like this before. Regaining her composure, she refocused on Eris's magic. As he kept channeling his power into the crystal, it grew unbearably hot. He asked whether the crystal could withstand this strain or would break. Assuring him of its durability, she said she had never heard of that happening. They watched in utter disbelief as the crystal began to crack before their eyes. It immediately split into 2 pieces. Seeing this, Eris began to question what it meant. The receptionist once again found herself falling to the ground. She trembled as she murmured. She wondered how this happened, since even an S-ranked venture's magic should have been stopped by the crystal, and began to suspect Eris was from the hero party. Dismissing her suspicion at once, he said it was obvious a magic wielder from the hero party would not want to become an adventurer. Reaching out, he offered his hand to help her up and, most importantly, asked about the test results. She told him he had definitely passed the test. Apologizing for the trouble, he acknowledged that because the crystal was broken, further tests could not be carried out for the time being. She said the outcome was unexpected and that the guild should have anticipated it, as she inspected the broken crystal. After she scraped her hand and it started bleeding, Harris immediately took her hand and called it quite an unspectacular break. He offered to heal her wound with his magic, and it was treated quickly, leaving her stunned that Harris could heal as well as wield magic. Most people believe spellcasters used enhancement spells only for attack or defense, and few realized these spells actually granted specific properties. Without hesitation, he asked if there was any problem with him using healing magic as a magic wielder, and she did not deny it. He surprised her by offering to repair the crystal, and she asked if it was really possible as he began to pour his healing magic into the cracked crystal. It began to visibly mend itself. Soon the crystal was as good as new. Seeing the restoration, she expressed her gratitude. Yuusha humbly admitted the damage was his fault from the start. He then asked whether the next assessment would be the target practice test, and she confirmed it. They explained he should strike the target with either magic or a sword, and his score would depend on the power of his attack. Standing before the next assessment venue, the receptionist confidently said the upcoming target practice would be a breeze with Yuusha's magical power. Aris, an enchantment mage, asked her not to expect too much from him. Presenting himself as a supporter, he privately believed he could still pass the test. Soon after, she led him to the test area, where several straw targets lay side by side on the ground. To demonstrate, she formed a magic ball and hit the target, telling him it would glow based on the attack's power. To pass, he had to surpass his current attack power, and only his best of 3 attempts would count. She let him use either a sword or magic for this assessment. He realized he could wield a sword with enhancement magic, but he would not need any tools if he chose magic. He said either option would work, but magic was more convenient, so he chose it, and the receptionist, surprised to see him weigh both methods so easily, agreed. He chose to cast Fireball, a simple beginner spell available to many support roles. With only 3 chances, he chose a beginner spell for his first attempt. For the second, he aimed to get a high score with an enchantment spell while sticking to his plan. A needlessly large fireball formed in his hands, and he hurled it at the target. He noted even a fireball had its limits as soon as he turned around. Surprised, Eros saw the receptionist's stunned expression. She called his powers insane and said she had gone blind for a split second. Eros calmly assured her he wasn't even giving it his all. Her astonishment grew when she learned he was still holding back, and as the mist from the previous impact cleared. The receptionist was stunned by the damage, as the targeted dummy lay destroyed and the blast had reached the nearby dummies. Eris wondered whether the dummies were meant to break but dismissed the idea. With them clearly broken, she still marked the test as passed. For the final 2 shots, she told him he did not need to continue because he had already easily passed the assessment. Pointing to the damaged arena, she said they couldn't continue with the ongoing destruction. Without another word, Oris activated his healing magic, instantly repairing the devastated area and restoring every dummy he had destroyed. A woman immediately said they could continue the exams, but it was ultimately unnecessary. Joris cleared the target practice with a single fireball. Next came the practical exam, where he would act as the examiner and face a C-ranked venture in a one-on-one match. Only those judged to have passed this stage could move on to the final exam. Most E-ranked newcomers moved up to D and C rank by doing guild requests and gaining hands-on experience, while adventurers at C rank and above were generally seen as established. For the practical test, a risk had to win approval from an examiner who was a proper adventurer. Entering the arena, he saw he was not the only candidate, with many others there for the exam. The receptionist said it was rare for someone of Ares' caliber to finish all the exams in one day. Across from them, the examiner Chris stood and said the candidates looked much younger than he did. Apologizing for their wait, he told them he would be their opponent for the practical exam. They were told to choose either sword or magic as their combat style for the duel, and the match would end when one side was incapacitated or surrendered, with the duel's outcome deciding whether they passed or failed. Confidently, he told them to come to him with a clear intention to win. Eris then raised his hand and asked how points would be evaluated, since the tool's outcomes determined their success. Chris said the exam matched real requests and would test whether candidates had the skills needed for the final exam. They would assess basic compatibility, crisis management, and situational judgment. Eris thought the criteria seemed vague. Although it was not the answer he wanted, he decided to go ahead and asked whether beating Chris would be enough to pass. Chris scoffed and said he would pass if he could show he was capable. He added that while winning with guarantee a pass, he had never lost to any aspiring candidate who made that claim. Hearing this, Arist realized that even in a support role in the hero party, he expected a tough fight but was confident he would not lose. A victory would secure his passing, and that thought comforted him. Chris called for the first candidate in line to step forward and challenge him. When the girl stepped forward, Aris felt relieved to have avoided the first confrontation, which gave him time to plan. When the fight began, the girl wielded her magic in combat, and Ares thought she had a bright future for someone her age. While Chris got ready, Aris saw him read the flow of her magic and expertly redirect the attack. Chris lunged at the candidate at full speed. The girl trembled visibly. This made Aris wonder whether she had not anticipated such a complete failure. Skilled beyond her peers, she had an arrogance that seemed to be her downfall. Instantly, Chris hovered at her neck and she surrendered. Chris assessed her skills, noting her attack was powerful, but after she failed to launch a preemptive strike, she was totally unprepared for what followed. Given that level of skill, Chris said she didn't deserve to pass. He told her to try again next time, but only after she had significantly improved her skills, and with tears in her eyes she had to leave the venue. Aris then took her turn to compete. Checking the form, Chris was surprised to find an enhancement mage taking the exam. Ares also knew that enhancement mages were uncommon among most adventurers. Heavenly jobs were often specialized, while most people were spellcasters or swordsmen. Several rare roles existed, such as enhancement mages, healers, and unique jobs specializing in specific skills. Chris openly wondered whether an enhancement mage was actually using magic. Ors confirmed he intended to use it, noting he currently had no sword. Chris then revealed a rule Aris was unaware of. Candidates were not allowed to bring personal swords or stays into the exam and had to borrow one from the guild. Swords varied widely in combat power depending on their type, he explained. For a fair assessment, both candidates and examiners must use swords provided by the guild. After hearing that, Aris decided to borrow a sword from the guild. Chris immediately signaled the receptionist to bring another. Noting he'd never met anyone who could use both magic and a sword, he called Aris a magic swordsman and added that such resourcefulness would be pointless if both his skills were half-hearted. When the receptionist handed over a sword and the fight began, Chris let Aris start whenever Aris felt ready. There was a sense that Chris was willing to let him strike first again, but winning with a surprise attack felt unsatisfying. Choosing caution, he made a measured first strike. He first cast 4 enhancement spells on himself to increase his movement speed, attack power, and accuracy. Next, he enchanted his sword as well. Meanwhile, Chris watched in awe as Yuras displayed his skill and even enchanted his sword. With remarkable speed, Yuras charged toward the examiner, and simultaneously. Using cunning, he cast 4 devitalizing spells on Chris and his sword. He instantly applied effects that reduced movement and attack speed, and also lowered Chris's attack power and hit rate. Chris was stunned by Yuras' remarkable strength, while his own body and sword felt like he was dragging a mountain, and he could not understand how it had happened so quickly. Aris struck lightning fast and landed the attack. Instead of hitting Chris, it knocked off his wig, which now lay discarded on the ground, leaving the onlookers completely bewildered, and a witness said it was an unexpected turn of events beyond his grasp. Standing directly behind Chris, Aris apologized sincerely for his unexpected behavior, and Chris, trembling in voice and body, quickly told him not to worry, but Aris still felt guilty for embarrassing him. Refusing to hold back in the crucial duel, he activated his step enhancement magic, quickly formed a precise magic circle, and carefully channeled its energy into his feet. Moving so fast, he seemed to vanish from everyone's sight, while Chris struggled to understand our sudden disappearance. Aris stepped out from directly behind him and pressed the sword's cold blade against Chris' nape, ending the match and securing Aris's victory. Chris accepted defeat gracefully, while the other candidates stood stunned by a display of power so overwhelming that even the examiner surrendered. No one could figure out who this new candidate was after they effortlessly defeated a C-rank examiner. Chris and Horace introduced themselves. Chris asked whether he was really the enchanter from the hero party, and Aris immediately denied it, doubting that Chris really thought the hero party member would be tested like that. Just then, someone stared intently at Chris's shiny bald head. Aris apologized, but Chris quickly dismissed his concern, saying he knew it wasn't intentional. At that moment, Aris offered to instantly restore his hair, which stunned Chris and made him doubt it could be done. Aris did not hesitate, and immediately placed his hand on Chris' head. Miraculously, his baldness was replaced by a lush, thick growth of dark hair, leaving Chris completely speechless. Feeling overwhelmed, Chris expressed his deep gratitude and promptly gave Joris a passing grade on his test, moving him directly to the final test. Soon after, Eris arrived at the northeastern Issel Forest near Bergam Village, the site of the final exam, where the task was a collection quest. Earlier, the receptionist told him to collect 20 vitality herbs for the potions. With a strict 5-hour limit, he could either avoid battles entirely or fight while efficiently collecting the required herbs. Vitality herbs were the main ingredient in potions that restored health and mana, and higher-ranked hunting grounds promoted their growth because of the stronger local magic. Hare realized collecting 20 herbs in 5 hours would be difficult for an E-rank adventurer, but the receptionist advised him to do his best because a reward awaited him if he succeeded. Eris welcomed the prospect because any chance to earn was appreciated. The Issel Forest was a relatively high-rank area suited for adventurers, but its monsters were generally manageable for solo runs. Walking deeper into the woods, he soon came upon about 10 herds just ahead and confidently said that gathering 20 would not be difficult, when suddenly a fierce rat-like creature lunged at him at full speed. When it appeared, Eris quickly realized that although it had low defense, its attacks were ferocious because of its very sharp, venomous fangs. With a sudden, powerful kick, Eris sent the rat skidding across the ground. The smarter monsters were more cunning. Likewise, the creatures that saw Eris wisely backed away, which would make Russ's task much simpler. Having gathered all the required herbs, he headed back to the guild. Arrows moved closer to investigate the commotion and suddenly heard a girl's desperate, piercing cry for help. He found a young girl and was set upon by a menacing pack of blue wolves. Without clear markers in the area, solo adventurers often found it hard to scout. A wolf suddenly lunged and bit Celia's wrist with its sharp fangs. Celia's defenses were in ruins, and her inadequate gear offered no protection. In desperation, she tried to get the healing potion. It accidentally slipped from her grasp and fell to the ground. The ferocious beasts bared their sharp fangs and prepared to strike. He lunged at her, sending her flying backward into a tree. Celia strained toward the discarded healing potion, but it stayed just out of reach. At that moment, a wolf loomed over her, ready to attack, but Eris could not stand to watch the horror any longer. Stealing experience was a taboo among adventurers. Eris had at first decided not to intervene in their fight, but he could not stand by as Celia lay helpless. Effortlessly casting a powerful buff spell made specifically for women, he greatly increased her defense and magic resistance, boosted her healing, and made her movements much faster. Using a clever tactic, he cast debuff spells on the aggressive creatures, slowing their movements, cutting their attack power, and reducing their accuracy. Finally, he powered himself up as the wolves pounced on her. Instinctively, Celia closed her eyes and felt dread. However, when she cautiously opened her eyes again, an unknown figure stood beside her, helping to defeat the monstrous wolves, and she was stunned while Iris calmly told her to stay close to him because danger still loomed around them. The true essence of buff magic, he realized, was giving properties, and most of those effects could be reproduced. Buff magic can also be used offensively. Bravely, Eris cast a formidable, prominent magic circle, and instantly destroyed the entire horde of wolves, leaving Celia completely speechless. The few wolves that escaped his first attack immediately fled, and Eris gently took her shoulder and pulled her closer to him, saying she was standing too near the remaining blaze. The warning said that being caught in its effects could have severe consequences, but being so close to another girl distracted Eris. His face flushed while he managed to keep his composure. He knew he could not afford any distraction in such an emergency. Shortly after, they had safely escaped the immediate danger. Celia bowed to him and warmly thanked him for his timely help. Eris said it wasn't a big deal to him. Celia called that an understatement and asked whether he was a high-ranking adventurer. He surprised her by saying he wasn't officially an adventurer yet and would only become one upon delivering those herbs back to the Dold. He also asked why Celia was alone in such a dangerous place, noting that lacking enough power could be fatal for lone adventurers. Initially hesitant, she quickly became determined and confidently said she wanted to be a hero. When he asked if she wanted to join a hero party, she beamed as she agreed. Once saved by a hero, she made heroes her greatest inspiration. She admitted she had been defeating high-level monsters to quickly gain experience. Having nearly lost her life because of her recklessness, she reflected deeply on her rash behavior. Eris told her the swordsman's slot in the hero party was already filled. It would be a thorny path for anyone who pursued it, but Celia reassured him not to worry since she was not a swordsman. However, he said she used a sword even though she was not a swordsman. Celia replied immediately that her path did not fit any ordinary job, and she firmly believed a uniquely rare job was meant to exist in the world. Visibly excited, she revealed she was a sword saint. Meanwhile, across town in the southeastern part of Bergam village, at the Gerald soldier's tomb, Eris's former hero party marveled at the larger share of experience points they were now receiving and noted it was a very cost-effective method, simply achieved by expelling someone from their guild. Nardo said they would recoup the costs of those potions. Others also said enhancement magic could be easily replaced by common store-bought potions, and that kicking Oris out had been the right decision after all. Then they team up to fight a fierce wyvern. Some members observed that the monster seemed unusually tough that day. Struggling to keep pace, they faced the incredibly strong creature. They felt its attacks were powerful and extremely tough, and amid their struggles, one member produced a strength potion for them to drink. Meanwhile, Nardo Shriek instructed them to fight the monster seriously. After a joint struggle and many attempts, at last the party defeated the Wyvern. Nardo said they could easily defeat even a formidable enemy on their own. He also said it was just a coincidence that this particular wyvern was so strong. He ordered them to keep the momentum going, but the others exchanged cautious glances, unwilling to speak carelessly in front of Nardo. Meanwhile, Celia eagerly explained her unusual job to Arrest. A sword saint was a unique role with no equal, she explained, and by mastering it she could become the ultimate evolution of a swordsman. Determined she could become a hero if she put in the work, she ground tirelessly to gain experience points, and in turn, Eris said being a hero wasn't all sparkles and rainbows, and that it came at a significant cost. Celia said being a hero was a burden, but she was determined to go on an adventure with Eris and felt she had no choice but to become a hero herself. Harris's breath caught in his throat when she said his name so casually. Seeing his name appear out of nowhere in the conversation left him completely stunned. Harris then asked why she wanted to go on an adventure with him. Celia casually revealed that she had fallen for him and wanted to go on an adventure together to get closer, and Arrows let out a soft laugh. He quickly assured her he was not making fun of her dreams. He wondered how she could trust him so easily when they had only just met. Her reply was that he had risked his life to save hers. She also revealed a disturbing memory from 3 years earlier, when the Demon King's army had invaded her hometown, the village of Ruria. The demon seized her and immediately said it would dispose of her, calling her inexperienced. On the brink of death, a party of heroes rescued her. One hero even extended a kind hand to help her. Back in the present, Eris remembered rescuing a child about her age in Ruria, where the hero party had briefly stopped, and he was certain he had saved Celia from the Rangit family. Absurd events stared at him intently, asking how he knew those exact details. A closer look made the pieces fall into place, and she noticed a striking resemblance to the boy from 3 years ago and realized Arrows was the same remarkably sane legendary hero from that time. Harris now knew for sure he had been recognized as silly, and asked how a member of the hero party was taking the adventurer's exam. Eris told her calmly that he'd suddenly been kicked out of the hero party. He was now just an aspiring adventurer, and Celia was very excited about that. She unexpectedly meets her savior. Completely taken aback, she could not help embracing Ares, the very person she had longed to meet. Then he asked if she truly wanted to form a party with him. Celia said firmly that it would suit her perfectly, and seeing her resolute reaction, Russ thought she truly intended to stick around. They reached the guild house a short time later, and the receptionist was surprised to see their rival so early. She asked about the vitality herbs. Joris immediately opened his inventory portal. He presented the gathered herbs and the creatures he'd defeated with a flourish right in front of her, subtly suggesting she buy some materials while she was at it. When the receptionist saw the inventory portal, she was stunned and immediately asked what it was. However, Horace refused to reveal anything. He had claimed it was a company secret, but it was actually his item slot skill that let him open a gateway to another dimension with his enhancement magic. He accidentally produced that byproduct while using speed magic to interfere with spacetime. But no one else could open it, so it was useless to the hero party. The receptionist asked him to wait while she processed the purchase. She also congratulated him on successfully passing the adventure exam. He received his guild ID card and was told to take good care of it. Reissuing it would cost a hefty 10,000 jewels. At that moment, Silly stepped in and said she wanted to form a new party. A short time later, Eris and Silly left the old house and the party was finally assembled. Silly suggested they stop at the diner next door before heading back. Eris said he had nowhere to sleep that night and urgently needed to find a place. Nonchalant as ever, Celia suggested he stay at the same inn where she was staying. Ares tried to explain that if she had been male, there would be no problem, but he worried something might happen if they shared a room. The explanation still didn't get through her thick skull, and with wide, innocent eyes, she asked if he would like to share a room with her. Unable to resist her simple innocence, he decided to head to the diner for now. Soon after, they arrived at the diner and were served several delicious dishes. Faced with the enormous portions, Aris asked whether she could manage to eat it all. She reassured him not to worry, saying she was a big eater. He then asked if she was really serious about letting him stay in her room. She agreed without hesitation, smiling as she said she could eat that much and also have a wrist over with her favorite person. She later realized the portion was a bit too large for her appetite, so Aris offered to eat her leftovers, saying she really didn't have to force herself. Aris began eating with the same spoon she had been using. Her expression shifted when she wondered if that had been an indirect kiss. Seeing her bewilderment, he asked if she was all right, and she desperately tried to say she was fine. Shortly after they reached her room, Eurus said her place was not bad at all, and Silly added that she had carefully chosen that inn after trying several other places, and when he saw how spacious the room was, he said there was plenty of space for him to rest comfortably. As he spread a sheet on the floor, she asked what he was doing. She told him to rest in a proper cot or he'd make himself ill. Ors, embarrassed by her direct remark, tried to explain why a man and a woman sharing a cot could be problematic. Her innocent puppy dog eyes returned, and she asked softly if he really disliked the idea of resting with her. Again, Heroes could not resist and gave in to her wishes. Settling into the same cot as hers, he felt extremely self-conscious because she was resting very close to him. Silly giggled softly and said his shaky breath was tickling her neck, which made him turn away immediately. The cot was cramped, so her body kept pressing against his, and his face went bright red. The next morning, Ares was seen doing push-ups with vigor. The refined skills of an enchanter were not acquired overnight. They required stamina and deep knowledge, depending crucially on ancient spellbooks and nets. At that moment, Celia woke, greeted him with a cheerful good morning, and asked why he was up so early. Ares said he was simply doing his daily workout and had finished his 1,000 push-ups, sit-ups, and squats. His strict daily routine stunned her, and she wondered if he kept it up regularly. He casually asked if that was a normal routine for everyone, but she immediately denied it. This made him realize that the so-called heroes of his old party had likely mocked real efficiency. Concerned, she pointed out that while training was important, he should not push himself to such extremes. Ares said openly that he wanted to defeat the Demon King and then live a peaceful life, and he vowed to spare no effort for that cause. He added that if they managed to defeat the Demon King, the pervasive magical energy would vanish, and they would no longer have to keep fighting. Most airborne substances were harmless to humans, but could activate a variety of monsters. Using powerful barriers, the Demon King amplified the magical energy and drove the monsters insane. Ironically, Orest had to become stronger just to avoid fighting. Celia said everyone wanted a peaceful life, and added that his ambition might be too big for him. Eris had to agree, but it was still hard to fully grasp with just that explanation. Then he told an old story from 6 years ago, at the spot where a gorilla dungeon had suddenly appeared in their actual village. Unlike most dungeons, this one had a deadly rule. If it wasn't cleared by sunset, monsters would pour out relentlessly. Both of Or's parents were respected A-rank adventurers at the time, and they put him in charge of evacuating the villagers, and though he insisted on fighting with them, they would not involve him since he was not yet an adventurer. Despite his parents' exceptional strength, he had felt an unsettling premonition that day. It happened to be his 13th birthday, and his parents had promised to celebrate it with him. By sunset, the dungeon remained untouched, and as monsters kept pouring out, even more adventurers tragically lost their lives. Even as a child, Eris already understood what happened to his parents, so he vowed to grow strong and avenge them. Silly remembered the guerrilla attack in the city and felt relieved to have survived it. Heroes warned that more such incidents would happen unless the Demon King was defeated, and he was determined to prevent those calamities at any cost. He apologized again for ruining the mood, but Silly said it was an important topic to discuss. Still, Euras believed there was no point staying trapped in the past. Cilia suggested they eat before heading to the guild, then smiled gently and advised him to accept a quest as soon as they arrived. Soon after arriving at the guild, Yuris Khan said they could not hope to defeat the Demon King without proper teamwork, and that boosting the whole party's strength was essential. His top priority was strengthening Cilia, so he chose a quest in a specific area. When Cilia asked whether he had found a suitable quest, Orissa set her jaw and handed her the quest letter. It was a request to get rid of monstrous birds. She said she wasn't sure how much help she could give on that quest. He made it clear the quest was meant just for her that day. While it would be a challenge for Silia, the experience points gained would be substantial. Reluctant to take the quest, she said she could not reach the birds with her attacks. When he asked if she really couldn't beat flying enemies with a sword, she said it was impossible from every angle. Ora saw her resolute reaction and realized she often got too caught up in her principles, so to truly unleash her talent as a sword saint, she had to break through that barrier. He immediately offered to teach her a simple trick to complete the quest. Later that day, they arrived at South Road 227 near Belva Village. Aris volunteered to show the technique. As a monstrous bird lunged at him, he calmly told her to channel magic into the sword, compress it, and imagine amplifying it as she swung. Cilia was stunned by his display of power, but he still had more impressive tricks to show. Shortly after, he fired a blazing beam of magical energy into the sky that instantly blasted the surrounding area, then stood in one spot and declared his belief that even she could pull off the performance the same way, but she shook her head firmly and denied it. Trying to understand how something like that could happen. Handing the sword back, he watched her struggle to hold it on her first try. He explained the key was to relax her shoulders and let her magic flow smoothly as she swung the sword. Remembering the advice, Cilia complied and swung her sword, but her movements were clumsy and inexperienced. Iris stepped closer, took both her hands, and guided them to swing together for a while. Cilia felt flushed and stiff. He asked obliviously if something was wrong, and she quickly said no while trying to focus on her training. He quickly told her to breathe in sync and amplify her magic with a steady rhythm. A fierce beam of magic erupted from her sword, striking the monstrous bird and sending it keeling over in an instant. Aris then asked her to keep the rhythm and take the solo next, and she complied, trying it alone. Her strikes kept missing the target, but he encouraged her to keep doing her best. Although her attacks drifted slightly farther from the mark, Cilia practiced nonstop and soon used the technique he had taught her with little effort, and her success rate skyrocketed. Soon after, they needed to defeat just one more monster to complete the quest. Aris continued to praise her exceptional skills as a sword saint. He warned her to keep her guard up until the very end. Ready to help if anything went wrong, Aris saw they were likely to finish the quest without trouble. Suddenly, something caught his attention. When Cilia told him about the magical birds, which means we are now fleeing the scene entirely. Their flight looked odd for creatures only frightened by Cilia, because small magical birds rarely broke formation unless something was seriously wrong. At that moment, a huge Wyvern appeared. Cilia was caught completely off guard and anxiously asked what she could do in that situation. Aris showed no fear or surprise and calmly said the final target had simply presented itself. He realized Cilia had cut down every magical bird with single strikes, and with her current strength he believed she could easily take down that Wyvern on her own, leaving him filled with dreadful anxiety. She asked if he really wanted her to defeat that monstrous creature alone, but he calmly explained it would be easier for her to hit a large target than the smaller birds. Immediately, Cilia admitted it was an easier target. Her determination faltered the moment she saw the ferocious beast baring its sharp fangs. When she began to lose her composure, Aris tried to calm her, firmly declaring she was more than ready to defeat that creature with her skills after mastering the new techniques and gaining experience from the battles. Visibly calm, she regained her composure at once, deciding to give it one last try. She struck again, and the magic beam pierced the creature's thick, wavering scales, and Cilia could hardly believe she had defeated the monstrous creature by herself. She immediately hugged Aris and thanked him for teaching her, but he modestly said that he did little more than show her the technique and told Cilia to trust her own abilities more. After he suggested they head back to the village, she affectionately called him humble for downplaying the extent of his invaluable help. Soon after, they returned to the guild and told the receptionist they had completed the quest, who was clearly impressed by aerospace efficiency and time management. He admitted he hadn't fought at all during that quest. Cilia alone had defeated the magic birds with her sword. He said he only watched her perform from behind, and it was entirely her achievement. The receptionist found it hard to believe Celia could have defeated those countless magic birds with only her sword because it seemed physically impossible. Celia stepped forward and revealed she had learned an astonishing spell from Eris. She praised him further, saying he was exceptionally skilled at teaching. Eris could easily make the impossible happen, and he had only meant to support Celia from the sidelines, but he hadn't expected her to brag about him so openly in front of the receptionist. Her enthusiastic compliments made him blush, so he smoothly cut into the conversation, steered the topic away from himself, and said they had finished the quest. In response, she immediately checked the delivered materials. She felt one thing was missing, but he calmly reassured her and immediately produced it. It was the massive Wyvern Cilia she had defeated before. Stunned, the receptionist saw the formidable beast appear right in front of her. Some questioned whether that was truly the Wyvern Cilia had defeated. Ares looked genuinely confused and asked if its appearance was really that shocking to her. She immediately said it was shocking to her. That Wyvern was one of the strongest magical beasts, and even B-rank adventurers struggled to defeat it. Ares was really surprised because he had not realized how strong he was, and since the hero party had defeated those creatures easily, the receptionist assumed the party was very powerful. Just then, taking a risk was necessary to see if the Wyvern material would fetch a good price, and the receptionist confirmed it would be a significant boost to their earnings. Then she quickly reviews the Wyvern and she recorded the quest completion in the meantime, then retrieved their guild ID cards. Their quest completion points were updated to 30 out of 100, and they received 1 guild point for the quest. She also told him he would reach the next rank once those points reached 10. Diligently completing quests and collecting points would ultimately raise an individual's adventure rank. Some then asked if they could simply level up by clearing easier quests. The receptionist said it would be no problem, but she pointed out they needed to complete at least one quest in each rank tier to advance. This prevents unworthy adventures from appearing at higher ranks. The receptionist immediately said they were clearly not suited for E rank because of their exceptional abilities and remarkable strengths. At that moment, they finished the appraisal. She was surprised when she saw such a large amount listed. Their quest reward turned out to be 50,000 jewels. The bio price for the Wavering itself would be an additional 50,000 jewels. Leaving the guild house together, Silly looked anxious, unable to imagine what to do with so much money since she had never had that much at once, and she feared it might be stolen. Eris calmly assured her that they could just hunt again if that happened, but Silly added with a concerned look that it was Eris's hard-earned money. Hearing that, Arrest suggested splitting the 50,000 request fee between them and giving the Wyvern's reward money entirely to Celia. He remembered his old hero party, always arguing over their shares. Eris wanted to be completely fair when dividing the spoils, since Celia had taken the Wyvern down on her own, but Celia insisted she had not been alone. They said they couldn't have defeated it without him and insisted he should receive the full amount. When Oris heard that, he couldn't help calling her kind. She gently suggested letting him hold the money for the time being. Sliding the pouch into his item slot, he said he would use the money to buy a suitable weapon for Celia. Unsheathing her sword, she said it was a pretty good weapon. Eris figured it was probably a decent market sword, and he said that although it was a good blade, unleashing a sword sink did not reveal its true power, and she would soon find it lacking in many ways. He suggested planning ahead and getting a better sword first, and Silly was amazed he was thinking so far ahead. He then said they could even get a custom-made sword using the 100,000 jewels they had received. Silly's face lit up with excitement, and she asked if it was a gift, but he said it was a reward for her efforts. At the same time, Joris's former hero party struggled to keep up, as they finally realized that expelling Joris from their group had been a serious mistake. One member could help with potions and healing, but that was far from enough to fix the damage they were taking. Others suspected Eurus had been weakening the monsters while also buffing them. Another person said he had never heard of such a capability. They remembered that back then they had kicked Eris out without a second thought. Nardo had silenced him, which made them realize Eris had been trying to say something important before he was expelled. They now realized that Joris had quietly supported them behind the scenes the whole time. One member said she would never have let Nardo convince her to banish Eris if she had known the truth earlier. Without warning, Nardo stormed over, grabbed her shirt forcefully, accused her of hypocrisy, and said she had been secretly scheming. And now treated him like a villain. He said everyone had agreed to expel Eris from the party, so they were all equally guilty. Trembling, she apologized to him, and Nardo urged them to stop dwelling on the past and focus on moving forward. More importantly, he asked about the supply of healing potions, and she said she had already used up the month's allocated funds. Immediately, he ordered her to go buy more from the store. She revealed that repairs for their gear from yesterday's brutal battle cost 800,000 jewels, and said their next month's lodging fees would be severely affected if such problems continued. After a pause, Nardo said Eris was a comrade who had ventured with them, and that he would not turn him away if Eris wanted to rejoin the party. Nardo clearly refused to humble himself before his comrades after personally expelling Eurus, and he thought the group's power balance could completely flip if he wasn't careful. When he makes a sudden decision, the other members agree immediately with little complaint. Nardo also promised them he would personally ask Eris to return if he met him again. The girl insisted Eros would never return after being banished like that, but the others shushed her. Noting that Nardo changing his opinion at all was a significant step forward. Without adventure qualifications, he said he couldn't accept requests anymore. Convinced he had no choice but to return because he could not earn money or recruit new allies, they did not know Eurus had already formed a new party with his reliable partner Celia. At the armor store, the retail staff turned Eris down, saying they only handled weapons in stock and could not accommodate custom orders. Silly realized that taking down the waiver had earned her a whopping 50,000 jewels, yet she couldn't even order a custom sword. Eris suggested they try persuading the weapon merchants in the capital, and his attention then turned to New York. Nearby, people talked about a dwarf who had recently turned down a job that would have paid a fortune in jewels, and they were puzzled about what might convince him. Renowned for their craftsmanship, the dwarves were admired, and Eris had heard tales of the dwarf clan's master craftsman during his hero party days. Aura approached them without hesitation and asked for more details. The man said Eris looked familiar and asked if he was also curious about that master dwarf. Eris replied playfully and enthusiastically that she wanted a custom-made powerful sword. The man admitted they had gone there hoping for some fine weapons too, but the old dwarf was stubborn and refused their request. The dwarfs also told him their condition was that he would craft only for people he deemed worthy. Acceptance was based solely on swordsmanship. Then, Eris pulled out a map and asked them to point out his location. The man clearly pointed in a direction on the map. Since the workshop was nearby, Silly decided to go the same day. Her stomach suddenly let out a loud growl, and she blushed deeply while trying to explain the awkward noise. He decided they should go to the workshop the next day instead. She was told not to push herself too hard when she was that hungry. Suddenly, a young girl named Sherrit accidentally bumped into a burly man and scraped her knee, without hesitation. Eris rushed to her side and healed the wound instantly. Astonished, Sherrit watched her injured knee miraculously heal, expressed deep gratitude, and left quickly. Trying to praise his kindness, Silly's stomach betrayed her again with a loud growl, leaving her mortified. Eris' soft chuckle made her even more irritated, so she scolded him for not being nice. The next morning they reached the workshop of Gale, the infamous dwarf, and as they knocked on the sturdy gate, a short elderly man stepped forward and demanded to know their business. Eris apologized for dropping by unannounced, introduced himself, and said he was looking for a master craftsman. Gale shook his head in disbelief and said Eris was just another adventure in pursuit of a weapon. Eris told him they wanted to order a sword for Celia, and Gale, without hesitation, asked whether Celia truly deserved his custom-made sword. Asked to see her current weapon first. Watching her sword closely, he noted that her potential was impressive, but she still lacked refined skill. He was sure that if he entrusted his sword to someone inexperienced, they would just misuse its power. Silly's expression turned somber as she resigned herself. She decided she had to improve her skills before daring to return after seeing them give up so easily. Surprisingly, Gale said they hadn't tried to bribe their way in after being rejected, and Eris replied that Gale seemed like someone who couldn't be bought with gold. Besides, he didn't have enough money to buy their way in. Gale appreciated the honesty, but his original conclusion remained unchanged. In a surprising coincidence, Sherrit suddenly appeared and asked whether her grandfather was once again sending adventurers away empty-handed. At that moment, she ran into Eris and Celia and thanked them again for their invaluable help the day before. Gale, confused, asked if she knew them, and Sherrod confirmed, revealing everything that had happened the day before soon after. Arisk remarked that he couldn't believe the child they had saved would turn out to be his granddaughter. They also seemed to have gotten past Gale's tough exterior. It seemed he had softened a bit after learning about the incident from the day before. Gale then said they were not the bad people he had first assumed. He immediately offered them his sword. Celaya looked very pleased by his announcement. Sherrod said her grandfather didn't want anyone to misuse his prized swords. Gale warned that weak adventurers could easily lose their sword to a villain. He then set out 3 essential conditions for them. First, Aris would undergo regressive training to master Celia's swordsmanship. Second, he would wield a sword crafted by Gale himself. He heard that Gale would craft a custom sword for him, as well as Celia's. The risk continued to question him. Gale immediately said he thought Aris was the most skilled swordsman, while Celaya had the most potential as a swordsman. Hearing that, Aris said he was not a swordsman but a spellcaster, yet Gale stuck to his claim that titles meant nothing to him. He explained that as long as they were pure, strong swordsmen, that was more than enough for him, because it was his ultimate dream as a craftsman. Aris then asked if the final condition involved gold. Gale dismissed him, saying he already had more than enough wealth. The final condition was to bring back more than a kilo of spirit stone. Shortly after, Uriz and Celaya entered the dense Bergam forest, known as the Forest of Spirits. Aris pointed out that Gale had set the toughest conditions for their final task. In that forest, spirit magic quietly built up inside many magical creatures. At the very top of the food chain, carnivores gathered the most. Cautiously, Celia struck the monsters with her sword so Ares could inspect the stones they dropped. He was disappointed that even the large ones yielded only about 30% of the expected amount. Celia pointed out that finding the strongest monsters was pure luck. Aris said they would have to be patient while searching for them, and Celia jokingly suggested the monsters could just come to them. On hearing that, an idea immediately came to him. He announced they would lure the strongest monster using bait. When she asked about the bait, Arisk said plainly it would be him, leaving Celia stunned. It was not entirely a logical idea, but Aris used himself as bait, carefully adjusting his magic so they could attract large carnivorous beasts that would sense a fluctuating power. Harris believed that if he simply held back a big surge of magic and then released it all at once, the forest's largest beast would surely reveal itself. Harris acted immediately, and as he had expected, the forest's most fearsome monster revealed itself. Thunderous footsteps shook the ground. When Celia froze in fear at its sudden appearance, Aris quickly covered her mouth to keep her quiet. Just then, a huge, terrifying monster came fully into view, sending Celia into sheer terror. Aris said casually that, given how huge the beast was, they might end up with a truly giant spirit stone. The carnivorous beast that ruled the entire forest was famously called the Behemoth. A fierce enemy who even his former party couldn't beat during his hero days arrests him. Harris immediately devised a plan and told Celia to dodge to the right after the attack while he drew its attention. He quickly drew a magic circle right behind him, grabbed the monster's attention, and the enraged beast lunged at him. At the opposite corner of the field, Celia fired a magic beam that hit the brute precisely. Commanding, Ares quickly told her to dodge, as he formed a wind arrow with his powerful wind magic. To counter the behemoth's innate earth affinity, Celia and Aris combined their magic and unleashed it with devastating force. With the monstrous beast defeated before them, Celia's eyes glinted with doubt. It was hard for her to believe they had brought down Behemoth on their own, and after praising Oro's strength, he modestly said he couldn't have done it alone. She insisted she had only been following his orders, and Eurus chose not to make an issue of it and let it go. He said a monster of that size should drop a massive spirit stone, so they inspected the fallen beast's corpse and were utterly astonished. They found a tiny young girl with delicate wings curled up in its stomach, small enough to fit in both hands, as Celia questioned whether she was real. Eris said her unusual magic meant she might actually be a spirit living there, just then. Regaining consciousness, the girl said she had rested very well. She looked at the two strangers and calmly asked who they were. Despite her small size, Eris instinctively felt her power was dozens of times greater than that of behemoths. For now, he decided to stay cautious around her and not startle her. Without thinking, Silly introduced herself to her as part of the rest party and even introduced him, despite his worry. The young girl cheerfully introduced herself as Self, the infamous spirit of the forest, and Iris, watching it unfold, felt relieved it was just his concern. He felt a little embarrassed about being so paranoid, while Silly said he seemed surprisingly shy. Moreover, they said it was rare to see people so deep into the mountains. When asked more about their business, Iris said they had come seeking spirit stones. Hearing that, Self-Preferfly paused briefly. before focusing hard to shape a solid stone chair. Eurus froze when he saw the supreme spirit stone right in front of him, immediately said he wanted it, and Self quickly handed it to him. Someone generously offered to make a double batch for them, and Ares couldn't help but marvel at the item. He pondered its immense weight, since even a single kilo of spirit stone was extremely rare. It was a dream come true for him, but he said its sheer size was far beyond anything they could afford, and Solth, without hesitation, said she could make as many batches of those stones as she wanted. Silly then explained to her that spirit stones formed from excess magical energy, and even the biggest beasts usually produced only stones about the size of a palm. Since nothing on the market was remotely bigger than the previous model, it was truly considered priceless. Harris gently told her he couldn't just take such a priceless item without offering something in return. She simply said she wanted to travel. He hesitated and asked if that was really all she wanted, and she nodded. Celia then asked if spirits like her could really be away from the forest, and reassured them she could manage for a few years outside it. Looking somber, she said she'd been trapped completely alone in that dim forest for a very long time. It had become suffocating for her, and she said that simply talking with them had lifted her mood and brightened her spirits. Aris and Silly exchanged glances, and Urus offered his hand, inviting Self to join them on an adventure. When Aris activated his item slot and placed the spirit stone inside, I was surprised and asked whether we could also enter the spirit realm. Seeing his confusion, she decided to demonstrate, quickly shifting half her form into the item slot. Aris finally realized that the domain he had long thought was his personal item slot was actually a spirit realm all along. He said it was very spacious, and more importantly, it was incredible that a human could access the spirit realm, she commented. Celia praised Aris for being so amazing, which made him wonder why she seemed so proud of him. She told Sulf she could travel freely out of the spirit realm, and that Aris was now basically a spirit, and Sulf playfully called Aris her dad. He was left speechless. Seeing his reaction, she asked if she'd said something wrong, but Aris said she had come out of Behemoth's belly, so she was technically its child. She ignored his remark and called Celia her mom, while Celia, without a care, playfully continued her game. Sulf asked again if she disliked being called mom, but Silly said she was truly happy to finally have a family. Blushing and offering a tender glance, she announced that Eurus had finally become a father too. Upon hearing this, stunned, Aris fell silent, as it suddenly seemed he and Celia were already a couple. He wondered if he wasn't feeling well, while Silly asked if he really disliked being called dad that much. Their precious, innocent faces made him unable to resist, so he accepted their reckless, playful decisions. Moments later, the three of them reached the village, and Self was amazed to see so many people, and Iris thought people were staring at him because Self was at the rear. Seeing those people staring so intently, she became embarrassed and lightly hid herself in a spirit realm. Without warning, Eris's former hero party appeared right in front of him, the same people who had cruelly banished him. Eros saw them and asked what they wanted from him, and Nardo told him not to be so cold to them, reminding him they were former comrades. It baffled Eurus that they had shown up out of nowhere after kicking him out of the party, but Nardo said that ever since he left, everyone seemed preoccupied. He wondered whether he missed his former comrades. He also said he might agree to welcome him back into the hero party if he wanted. Nardo added that Eris's name remained on the hero party register, so his return seemed inevitable, and he still had a chance to rejoin the party. Only 3 days had passed without Ari's crucial enchantment help, yet Nardo and the others gave up their pride far sooner than he had expected. With a subtle slice mark, Eris said they all seemed to be misunderstanding something fundamental. He then said he doubted they really wanted him back at the party, and added that they seemed confused about their position. That sharp remark left everyone momentarily speechless. Nardo replied sharply that Eris seemed to have misread their intentions, and other members warned him that if he abandoned the hero's path his rise to power would end, stressing that this was his last chance too. He asked them to reconsider his decisions, but Eris blurted to them that he did not care about being a hero or climbing the ranks, then quickly produced the defeated behemoth from an inventory portal above them, and said he was entirely satisfied with his situation. He also said he never intended to rejoin the hero party, and what mattered most now was that he had made truly important friends along the way. Seething with rage, Naruto called him Koki and threatened to erase his name from the royal city's records immediately, warning Eurus he would regret not listening earlier. A risk warned him casually that only time would tell who would regret it more, and suggested he please Nardo's. Shortly after they left, Salth stepped out of the portal and asked about the strangers, and Silly said they seemed to be Or's former hero party. Celia pointed out that it would not have killed them to ask more politely if they desperately wanted him back, but Eri simply replied that their pride would never allow it. She told them she would hide in the spirit realm whenever she sensed anyone else besides them. After a while, they reached Gale's workshop and placed the spirit stone chair before him, leaving him stunned. Gale put on his glasses and examined the item closely, saying he could not understand how Eris had managed to obtain such a priceless material. Eris credited it to the whim of the spirits. A remark that was partly true. Gale said he had never seen material so magnificent before. He expressed a strong desire to start on the remarkable piece immediately, and Gale told him to get to work, shaping it carefully with precise hammer strikes until it matched his vision. Aureus wondered if such action might interfere with the magic forming in the spirit stone, and Sherrod arrived to suggest they sit down and have some tea while Gale soon became engrossed in his work. Over steaming cups of tea, Sherrod proudly revealed that, while a normal blacksmith would need days to do the work, her grandfather could finish it alone with the strength of 100. Celia noted that Gale was a very boastful grandfather. They asked whether such an intricate item could really be forged so quickly, or said that today's blacksmiths used magic too. The huge flow of magic he felt coming from Gale earlier confirmed the rumors about his impressive skills. Was asked when the best time to return for the swords was, but Sherach's answer made him jump to his feet in disbelief when she said they'd be ready by the end of the day. He said it was all happening too fast, while she boasted about her grandfather's efficiency and world-famous skill, and then Gale arrived to announce that his work was finished. He set the two miraculous swords before them and declared they were undeniably his greatest masterpieces. When Eris gripped his sword, he immediately felt how light and responsive it was, and though it didn't use the spirit stone directly, it was filled with concentrated magic to greatly boost attack power. Celia was very happy to receive her first custom-made sword, which felt incredibly light and easy to wield, but Harist warned her immediately not to swing it carelessly. All his effort was wasted when her sword's gentle swing triggered a massive magical explosion that destroyed Gale's entire house and left everyone bewildered. A huge gaping hole had been torn through the workshop ceiling. Celia trembled as she considered what to do. Gale realized he should never have entrusted his magnificent sword to an inexperienced amateur like her. Eurus reacted quickly and used his healing magic to repair the gaping hole in the ceiling with ease. Cher praised his remarkable skills, and Gale finally sighed with relief. Silly bowed deeply before Gale and earnestly begged her forgiveness for ruining her precious home, and she gently told him not to worry, saying the house looked much cleaner than before. Gale secured a promise from them that Eris would take on Celia's crucial responsibility and master the news sword himself, because Gale firmly believed Eris and Celia were naturally linked. Both agreed carefully before leaving. As they left the workshop, Celia apologized again for her reckless behavior, and Ares told her to be careful with her new sword, emphasizing how strong it was. Just then she appeared out of nowhere, arched her back and stretched with a big yawn, and when he asked if she was Ristai, she quickly denied it, and Ares thought she was in some ways quite childlike. Celia shivered suddenly and noted that while the days were getting longer, the nights were still chilly. A sudden idea came to her, and with a casual smile she reached out and gently held Aura's hand, saying it would keep them warm for now. Make his face flush uncontrollably, then teasingly say they certainly look like a couple. But Silly said casually that his hands were just very warm. Gently intertwining her fingers with his, she whispered she wanted to stay that way forever. Eris' face went beet red, thinking it would be worrying if she really did not notice the awkward situation she was causing, but he also worried he might be overthinking it. At that moment, playfully remarked that her mom and dad really seemed to get along quite well. She asked if they were finally going home, and Aris said they were heading to Celia's inn. Self blushed mischievously and mocked them about staying in the same room together, and Celia said casually that there was no available end for Auras. Self called her amazing and playfully labeled her as mom, while Aris thought he should be very careful with Self. At that moment, people noticed a suspicious boy in a shabby hood standing at the prearranged meeting spot, apparently searching for a guest in a black cloak. Eris kept walking when the boy suddenly came up to him. When Eris asked who he was, quietly the boy motioned him into a nearby alley. Celia asked if he really knew that person, and Eris said the boy didn't seem hostile but was curious about the situation. Then it clicked and he wondered whether that suspicious boy knew he had once been a hero. Without hesitation, Eris followed the boy into the narrow alley. Then the boy apologized for interrupting them. When asked who he was, he said he bought guild cards. Believing he had extra guild cards, he had been patiently waiting for their arrival, and upon hearing this, Eris said a personal guild card could never be surplus, and trading such cards was strictly prohibited. Clearly, the boy had mistaken Ares for someone else, and once he realized his mistake, he tried to scramble away. He suggested they act as if they'd never met. However, Oris grabbed him firmly by the hood, his face stern as he declared. It was clear the boy understood his wrongdoings and would have to face the consequences for the sake of the world. He swiftly threw the boy into his spirit realm, and the boy said he had only done it for profit and vowed not to do it again. Later, Eris and Celia arrived at the guild house and immediately pulled out a stack of guild cards, setting the stack directly in front of the receptionist. It left her completely shocked when she asked what had happened. He described every detail of the events. She revealed that the loss and theft of guild cards had long been a troublesome problem, but she was interrupted before she could say more. A piercing screech from an unfamiliar woman cut through the air as she demanded to know whether they had her guild card. The crowd quickly gathered and started demanding their guild cards. The receptionist urged them to calm down and take their cards one at a time. Harris saw the chaotic scene, realized it was a serious problem, and apologized for keeping her so busy at the worst possible moment. He also asked what would happen to the boy involved in the illegal activity, and she replied that he would be taken to the guards and his parents would be notified. At that moment, the boy said he had no parents or siblings and no one to call for him, revealing that he was an orphan. Eris said he understood the feeling well because he had known the pain of losing his parents at a young age. Still, he said it did not excuse his actions, and that he must accept full responsibility for his actions. Harris asked what would happen to the orphans, and the receptionist said they would likely be taken in by an educational institution in the royal capital. Hearing that, Eris felt relieved, believing young orphans like them should still be given a crucial chance at rehabilitation. As they left, the boy thanked him and said somberly that, living that way, he struggled to make ends meet, earning barely enough to support himself, and Eris quietly noticed his untidy appearance. They concluded he was just a low-level thug whose profits mainly lined his boss's pockets. He urged the boy to abandon the underworld, reminding him that Eurus had gone out of his way to save him from an even worse fate. As they finally left, Horace saw the same women who had earlier, loudly, demanded her guild car standing with sad expressions. Her expression showed she probably hadn't found her missing guild card in the recovered stack. Celia narrowed her eyes when she saw him staring at another woman, pouted, and bluntly said she was leaving. Seeing her odd reaction, he asked if anything was wrong, and she insisted she wasn't angry. Her expression remained stubbornly sulky. Shortly after, they were shown standing in front of the quest board. Celia was deciding which quest to take to fully test her new sword, even though she was still limited to E-rank quests. Meanwhile, Heroes realized he had spent a fortune on his sword and wanted to take a quest to pay for his lodging. Silly voiced her concern, saying they should give up and stick to the usual requests, but he refused and immediately handed her a quest form. The task was to hunt an E-rank golem. Golems were massive, heavily armored creatures with rock-hard hides and immense destructive power, but they moved quite slowly. Furthermore, Orissa told her that even E-rank adventurers could defeat this enemy with a dozen people, so it would be a good target for Ciliate too. Her face showed concern and grief as she asked whether they were truly going to fight enemies meant for a dozen people. Calmly, he assured her that she was no longer alone, unlike during her lonely days, and that she would not get so much as a scratch while he protected her. He praised her independence too. Renewed confidence led her to accept the request, while Joris thought praising Celia and Dee always lifted her mood. When Saltz arrived at the lush green forest, her face lit up as she gazed at the scenery. They found the vibrant landscape vast and deeply refreshing. He realized she had spent so long trapped in that dim, isolated forest, and he vowed to let himself enjoy the outside world to the fullest. Reminding Celia of their task, he quickly devised a plan that had him draw the Gaul's attention with his magic, while she struck swiftly from behind. While they carefully carried out their plan, he stood as bait in front of a huge, terrifying golem. At Eris's signal, Celia pounced on the golem and struck it with a full, devastating force that split the monstrous creature in two. She asked if it was truly finished, still in disbelief. He confirmed it seemed so. Gale's sword was undeniably powerful, but that alone could not explain such extraordinary strength. Celia thought the Gons there might be weaker than they expected, but Eris disagreed and quickly pulled back his sword. He added that they were not much different from regular gallons, but when he tried to slash another one, he saw that their new weapons were simply too powerful. His personal growth seemed to outpace his understanding, so he decided to tackle them all at once, saying that confronting them one by one would not be an effective strategy. Celia doubted the Gons could all approach them at once, and Eris chose to show his ability rather than explain it. Quickly forming a magic circle, he spread his magic thin over a wide area, capturing the positions of all the surrounding enemies. He then successfully targeted the remaining 8 Gons and used enchantment magic to give them an intimidating aura. Those monstrous gallons advanced aggressively, and Iris said calmly she could now handle so many with her current strength, while Celia stood stunned that Iris's trick had worked so perfectly. In no time she swung her sword with smooth precision and effortlessly defeated all the other women, leaving Iris utterly amazed. He praised her, saying she had mastered the technique he taught during the monstrous bird hunt in only 2 days, and that, for the first time, she was willing to use a sword, no less. He added that this was only the basics, and there was much more to learn, a remark that surprised Celia. Retrieving the remains of the defeated Gons into his item slot, he noted that she was absorbing the power much better than he expected. As they began to depart, someone nearby told her to return and said she had indeed gathered many scraps. However, when he inspected them further, he found a guild card for a woman named Yukina Rembrandt showing her job as a sage, the level-headed woman who had been desperately searching for her guild ID. Eris explained the sages to Celia, clarifying that they held one of those rare positions alongside the sword saints. They asked casually and foolishly whether he also wielded a sword like hers, but he denied it. To elaborate further, the magician on stage was a master of offensive magic, with talent that was off the charts. Her face lit with enthusiasm as she asked about the chances of 2 different jobs working together. He explained that both jobs showcased unique talents essential to the nation. Urging them to hurry back to the guild immediately to deliver the important news, he affectionately patted Saltz's head and praised her for her invaluable help. At the guild house, Yukina was still frantically searching for her lost guild card, unsure if she could ever get it back. Asked about the reissue fees, she was told by the receptionist they were a hefty 10,000 jewels. Just as stress began to show on her, Aries' team arrived with reassuring news. They told her they had picked up her guild card on the way. When Yukina saw her lost guild card, she was overjoyed. Next, someone asked if her wallet was with it. Aura said the guild card was all they had at the moment. She said her wallet had been snatched and the thief had tossed her cards aside. Relieved to have it back, she offered to do something to thank him for his help, and Harris told her not to worry. She replied firmly that there was no chance of that, because it might have been delivered elsewhere and seriously misused. He replied that shady dealers were illegally trading guild cards and that the risks were greater than he had first imagined. Then she said firmly she had no cash on her. She would willingly repay him with her body. The remark left Eris utterly confused and stunned, and Silly simply asked what she meant, but Eris stammered and couldn't explain. Realizing it was too soon for Cilia to grasp such delicate matters, he turned to Yukina. I suggested, out of concern, that she be a bit more cautious about her surroundings before saying such things. She said earnestly that she would gladly step in on his behalf whenever an opportunity arose. Additionally, with unwavering sincerity, she offered to repay his kindness as well and said she would be happy to. He stuttered, unable to form a proper sentence before her, and her face fell as she murmured that they saw her as a burden who would not contribute much in the battle. Aureus looked genuinely surprised by her remark, and she clarified it meant exactly what it sounded like, assuring them with determination that she was willing to pour her heart and soul into helping them with any and every request. Eris was finally dumbfounded when he understood the innocent meaning behind her reckless words, and he felt relieved as he nervously said he was more than thrilled to receive her offer of help, while Yukina asked what had suddenly made him so flustered. Yukina suddenly remembered what had happened earlier. She made a thoughtless remark and felt her face flush with embarrassment. Unable to meet his eyes, she looked away. It was hard to believe the words that had just slipped out in front of a stranger. Admitting her mistake, she said she should have been more careful with her wording, while Eris gently told her not to dwell on it. Silly stayed completely oblivious to the awkward situation and warmly invited Yukina to join their party, eager to begin exciting adventures together. All three introduced themselves right away. Eris said he was eager to see Yukina's skills in action, and Yukina was equally eager to test his abilities. Eris announced he would take charge of the designated testing grounds, and the receptionist readily offered to escort them to the training venue. At the testing grounds, Yukina, thrilled to show her formidable magical power, made Eurus notice how confident she was. Expertly preparing to unleash her spell, she swiftly activated her attack magic, Flame Beans, and hurled the lightning-fast ray that completely burned the straw dummy. Cilia was impressed by her display of power, and Eurus praised her flawless firepower while scanning the testing venue thoroughly. Yukina wondered whether the exam site had always been so rough, not realizing that the cause of its shabby appearance stood right beside her. The receptionist then told her everything that happened on the day Eurus took his exam. As an extra reward, she gave Aura 300,000 jewels for completing the quest and bringing in a total of 10 golems. Each member of Ariston Cilia would receive 150,000. Yukina was stunned when she heard the amount. Celia humbly said that none of those achievements were hers. With 70 guild points, Aris even ranked up to a D-rank adventurer. Yukina fell completely silent when she heard he'd risen from E-rank to D-rank in just 2 quests, and then her stomach growled loudly. He suggested they go to the cafeteria and have lunch before moving on, and she surprised him by saying she was completely broke. He hadn't eaten anything since the day before, which shocked him. Determined, Celia gripped her hand and said she couldn't fight on an empty stomach, insisting she would pay for her lunch. Soon they reached the busy cafeteria, and Yukina ate every dish in front of her as if she had not eaten in days, while Eurus watched her incredible appetite. Smiling, Yukina praised the meal and warmly thanked both of them. Celia then praised her impressive appetite. It made Aris wonder how she had the nerve to say that directly to her face. Cilia and Yukina appeared to get along well. Iris thought Yukina seemed like an ordinary girl despite her unusual job, and he questioned her, assuming she had received countless offers to join parties from every direction. Because she was a respected sage, he asked which party she was in now, and she said she was adventuring alone and simply couldn't fit back into the party she used to be part of. She said they simply wanted different futures, and he thought that was a fairly typical reason to part ways. Silly then asked whether Yukina had a deeper reason for being so particular about her future. She revealed she was on a quest to find the 7 magical tombs scattered across the world. Eris asked whether a legendary tomb really granted the power to cast various spells just by reading it. She replied that only those truly worthy could do so. Eris said it was a treasure only the wise could master. Revealing that Key was a renowned magic scholar, she showed a neat, precise set of notes and said they were his research notes containing crucial clues for his spellbooks. When Eris asked who she was talking about, she said it was her late father, who died when she was just a child. Vowing to collect it all in her lifetime, she prompted Celia to ask why she would go to such extreme lengths. Her mother, who had cared for her all this time, had recently passed away. Dazed by loss and a sudden sense of freedom, Yukina stumbled on her father's forgotten research. Eris finally understood why she had been so eager to collect those spellbooks and realized she had been carrying a heavy emotional burden. Yukina told him she was determined to unlock resurrection magic once she collected all 7 volumes. Dazed and disoriented, he asked whether she planned to bring her parents back, and she admitted that was part of her motivation. The thing she feared most was losing someone she loved again. Someone risked calling her kind-hearted, but she humbly saw herself as more of a coward. Eris knew all too well the agonizing pain of losing someone dear. He was sure he would have done the same in her position. Surprisingly, Yukina wasn't only bound by her parents' deaths. Her deep wish to master resurrection magic revealed how compassionate she was. Truly brave, the girl lived up to the esteemed title of a sage. The more Eris thought about her steady resolve, the more he wanted her by his side. He believed that if she successfully unleashed her immense talent, she would become an invaluable ally to them. That made her absolutely essential to his quest to defeat the Demon King. With many important thoughts on his mind, he asked whether she wanted to officially join their party. He asked her to join his party, promising they could defeat the Demon King, while she fulfilled her dream of traveling the world to collect the ancient artifacts. Collecting magic tones from around the world fit Yukina's aspiration perfectly, so he thought it was a good idea. Although she acknowledged it was a kind offer, she politely declined his proposal, and when he asked why she had refused. Not cut out for hero parties, she preferred going solo to dealing with group dynamics. Eris agreed politely, saying that putting a party together wasn't always easy. She warned that every fight with powerful monsters carried a real chance they'd be separated forever, implying they could lose a comrade, and they were talking about the Demon Lord himself. That only strengthened her resolve. For 1,000 years, countless parties had bravely challenged the demon lord's forces, but each attempt ended in ruin. After hearing that, Aura looked for the real reason, asked if losing her precious allies truly scared her, and confirmed it immediately. Moreover, she said that although she believed Aura's party would not collapse so easily, she still could not shake a deep anxiety. He admitted a newcomer probably wouldn't survive a direct fight with the Demon King. With a resolute expression, he said he would show they were not taking reckless risks. Cilia stepped in and said she would do her best to impress Yukina and convince her to join their party. Arist also suggested Yukina come along to watch them finish their quest so she could answer them more firmly. Because of you, they could finally take on a D-rank quest. The jump from E-rank to D-rank was a completely different world in difficulty and prestige, with a single D-rank member roughly equal to 10 E-rank members. Silly remained skeptical because it was an upper-tier D-rank quest, and their formidable task was to eliminate 30 salamanders, so Silly doubted they were truly ready. Ferocious lizard-like monsters roam the plains, with powerful jaws and legs, and even a group of average adventurers cannot compete with them. Aris insisted they couldn't waste their time and energy on weak monsters if they wanted to show their strength as a group. At that moment, Eros heard Sultz's voice to Cohen in his mind, asking whether she could step out of the realm as she revealed herself. Yukina was astonished to see the graceful child, who said the outdoor air always felt refreshingly energizing, and then greeted Yukina. Have Cilia say she could still keep track of everything, even while hidden in the spirit realm. Curious at seeing a new person, someone playfully circled Yukina while Yukina asked who the child was. Revealing her name, Aris said she was a spirit and asked Yukina to be gentle with herself because she had been through a tough time. Although Aruz had at first hesitated to reveal himself to Yukina, keeping her hidden forever wasn't an option if he truly wanted Yukina to join his party. In the Bergen forest near the plains, the scene shifted as Aris casually suggested that Celia take down the enemy first, leaving her stunned by the unexpected order. Rushing over, she wrapped her arms around him tightly, desperately refusing to accept his decision, an act that left Aris subtly blushing. He knew she could handle the task alone, but he worried she would not perform at her best because she was so nervous. Yukina quietly wondered, watching them, whether they were a couple. Still blushing, Aris gently reassured Cilia that they were a party, and he would certainly come to her aid if she ever found herself in danger. Cilia's relaxed at his reassuring words and immediately agreed to follow his command. Shortly after, Celia stood her ground before a menacing monster, ready to strike. When the monster detected her, Celia lunged at it without hesitation. It dodged slightly faster than foes on E-rank quests, so Celia was at a clear disadvantage in a straight-speed contest. As the Sword Saint, she had exceptional reflexes and kingly instincts. In close combat, predicting an opponent's movements was the key to victory. Quick reflexes let Cilia's Swift dodge the monster's attack just in time as it rushed at her with lightning speed. With swift, precise strikes, she cut them down while Cilia finally blasted the giant salamander away. Auras praised her impressive skills, and you couldn't stay speechless after seeing such a powerful display. Turning to Yukina, he asked if she was surprised and still shaken, and she wondered how much Cilia must have trained to reach that level of skill. Revealing that Celia had only started her specialized training a few days earlier and still had plenty of room to grow, he left Yukina stunned, and then Eris stepped forward to display his polished skills and remarkable abilities. He said their party moved as one, always making a careful plan before battle, and while Celia used a sword to dispatch foes, he quickly took down monsters with magic. His assessment was that their powerful group, taken together, matched C-rank adventurers. This meant they could confidently show their skills against C-rank or even higher-tier challenges, but while he boasted about his formidable group, Yukina tried to interrupt with something important, and he paid no attention to her words. His mind was fully consumed by unwavering determination to prove that none of their party members would ever perish, directly addressing her deepest fear of losing precious allies in his carefully planned first move. Casting a powerful buff on himself, he simultaneously unleashed a debuff on the enemy horde. He planned to unleash Hellfire, a devastating, prominent spell that would make fireballs slam into each other and explode with massive force, and the fusion would normally need huge amounts of magic that even skilled mages could not produce together. However, with his unique chanting magic, he could reshape the spell's nature efficiently, letting him produce its full power alone. Completely absorbed in showing Yukina his immense power, Aris didn't register any of her words. He admitted they would not come away unscathed, but he had wisely formed a barrier to protect them from any lurking danger as he carefully carried out his plan. A massive, widening explosion swept across the entire area, instantly destroying every single monster. Once the dust from the explosion settled, Eris turned to check on Yukina. He realized she had fainted and was lying on the ground. Later, when Yukina regained consciousness, Eri asked whether she had truly seen his abilities in action. He admitted he may have gone a bit too far just to convince her of how powerful he was. Acknowledging Celia's strength, she said Eris was on a completely different level. Convinced she didn't belong in their party and would only hold everyone back, she pulled away until Celia stepped in without hesitation. She admitted she had also felt like a burden when she first met Eros, but Yukina said Celia's previous party experience and strict training were what mattered. Startled, she learned from Eris that Celia had also been a solo adventurer before she met him. He added that he had a sharp eye for people with real potential and wanted Yukina to trust his judgment, since he seemed to have already won her over. He suggested she take down the salamander herself, and Yukina complied with little complaint. As she formed a glowing magic sphere in her hand, a powerful beam shot from her at the monster. However, she could not take it down in one shot, so she launched another attack and swiftly dispatched the creature. Watching her demonstrate her magical powers, noting the outstanding quality and quantity, he said she had real raw talent but still plenty of room to improve. He explained that mastering magic usually required relentless training, and, although hard-earned intuition and experience mattered, a clever trick also played a part. Using the same magical powers and techniques she had, he unleashed a much larger blast that easily destroyed several salamanders at once. He retrieved the fallen monster's formidable claws as proof of the hunt, and said he had kept the original magic power at the same level as hers, merely adding some refined techniques to it. Yukina stood open-mouthed in astonishment when she found a magical forshape 3 times larger than hers. He broke the technique down step by step so she could fully understand, starting with fire beams and explaining that advanced magic is just a combination of basic spells, but a lot of magical power is lost when they are linked. Strengthening that connection would allow them to eliminate the waste easily. Quickly understanding his explanation, she added that nearly 70% of the original power was lost during conversion, but Aureus was certain she could sustain all of the remaining magic. And nearly triple her power. She still saw them as mere theoretical assumptions and questioned whether they would work in practice. He answered her plainly that she could use connection magic to combine spells seamlessly, and she pressed him further, asking whether he would activate it too and whether that would raise magic consumption. He denied it, and with a flick of his finger, a tiny spark of fire appeared, as he said it did not create fire or water in you, only using a fraction of the magic needed to ignite. But when she asked about the exact combination for the connection magic, she was stunned when he calmly said he considered it basic magic. He said that in his previous party, members expected buffs from multiple people to overlap as a normal occurrence. Self stepped in and charmingly reminded the confused women that it was like flipping the script on magic common sense. He grabbed a stick and drew a rough human figure on the ground to show the intricate magic circuit inside, then explained the circuit worked as a 2-state system, 1 when active and 0 when inactive. He added that all magic could be built exactly from combinations of 0s and 1s. With more branches, they could effectively switch individual segments on and off. The complex concept finally began to click for her as she said that, theoretically, magic would have a total of 48,816 combinations if the branch is increased. Understanding hit her as she realized there were over 1,000 combinations with just 10 branches and more than 1,000,000 with only 20, and it seemed like those intricate combinations could explain all magic. Determination lit her eyes as she quickly flipped through the pages of her book. After grasping the dual combinations of 0s and 1s, she tried every magic spell. A bright smile spread across her face when she realized she could master countless applications and that the possibilities were almost limitless. Her excitement reminded Eris that she truly was the brilliant daughter of a scholar. Then she asked for confirmation that they no longer needed to gather spell books for resurrection magic. Harris politely refused, saying what he'd deciphered was only a small part of how magic truly worked. He still could not fully explain certain aspects, especially those of ancient magic, to demonstrate the power of connection magic. He carefully wrote combinations of 0s and 1s on the ground and advised her to try that order first. Yukina complied, produced 2 basic spells, and then used connection magic to combine them exactly as she had been taught. Then she unleashed a barrage of massive fireballs. She created a huge blast she had never managed before. Excitement lit her face as she realized she could control her true powers, shortly after clearing the whole area of fierce monsters. As they walked back, Eris thanked Yukina sincerely for her much-needed help, and she replied modestly that she owed him one because it would have taken her twice as long to do it alone. With a touch of hesitancy, she asked if she could officially join their party, and their faces brightened with happiness. Silly pulled her into a tight, joyful hug, while she said with self-pity that she had a new mom now. Eris warmly welcomed her to their party, and Yukina promised she would do her best to help. Back at the guild house, the receptionist was genuinely astonished that Yukina, who had always seemed so reluctant to join a party, had finally joined one, while Celaya said excitedly that he truly possessed a knack for attracting people. The receptionist examined the claws they brought back, which served as proof of the hunt, but even though it was enough, it still felt underwhelming to her. Yukina revealed that the magic she had learned was so overwhelmingly strong that it had accidentally melted away what was left of those monstrous salamanders. The receptionist said Eris was truly exceptional as a teacher, but added that Cilia and Yukina simply had a lot of talent. He believed that a broader approach let people learn much faster and develop their full talent. Focusing only on what was close would not let them see the distant moon. If they dropped their self-imposed limits, they could clearly see the fairway moon. Yukina found his analogy remarkable. She also asked if they had chosen a party name, and he replied that they still hadn't settled on one, so keep that in mind. After much thought, Eris quickly registered their party's name as Infinity. After they finally ate their much-needed meal, Eris asked about Yukina's lodging, and Yukina said she didn't have enough money to renew it that morning. Celaya immediately suggested she stay in their room for the time being, and Yukina reacted and asked whether they would really be staying in the same room. She stared at him with a clear, questioning look, and he stammered that it was only because Celius insisted so strongly. Although you were eager, I agreed to stay. Resting, he thought they should definitely move to a bigger one soon. Suddenly, suspicious hooded figures came up to them, saying Yukina had dropped her guild card. When she checked, it was clearly not hers. Stunned, they watched as the figures grabbed Cilia and held her hostage with a knife pressed to her neck. One of the menacing men ordered Arrest to raise his hands and step forward quietly. Eris asked why they had appeared so suddenly, and Yukina said those thugs might be black market dealers of guild cards. The thug, hit by the remark, admitted she was quite perceptive. She said casually that it was obvious, since only someone using another person's guild card would do something that shady. Eris immediately thought of the young boy from earlier and wondered if they had come to avenge a fallen comrade, but the thug said Eris wasn't very sharp on that point. He revealed the boy was only a pawn to be used and then discarded. What happened to him was none of his concern. He snapped that he'd landed them in deep trouble, but Eris, showing no sign of worry, said they'd be ready for the consequences of running a shady business in the capital. The thug grew angrier and said he could sell Russ's 2 pretty ladies to cover their losses. They warned that Yuras would regret making them his enemies, but Yuras replied calmly that they had made a serious mistake. Instantly, Athsilia retrieves her sword, and Yukina regains her magical power. They swiftly apprehended the thugs with little resistance. The gang leader stood stunned by the women's lightning-fast reflexes, and Eris slipped in from behind to capture him. Saying Celaya and Yukina were simply too strong for his minions, he bound all 3 with a tight rope and told Celaya to summon the royal guards. Meanwhile, the leader quickly offered Eris more money than the guild paid him if he agreed to go with them. However, Hears admitted he had received nothing from the guild for his actions. Eris chose a peaceful society with no illegal black market activity. He said he worked for his own interests and principles, not just for money. Soon after they reached the inn, Celia asked why Eris hadn't helped her when the thug took her hostage, and Eris said he believed she could handle them on her own. Her face still showed a powdery expression. She steered the topic away with a clever move. RIS announced it needed to discuss the reward distribution. Yukina said the contribution criteria were unclear, and they would normally distribute rewards based on each person's input. Harris believed that although damage often favored attackers, support roles should still be properly rewarded under his principles. To ensure a fair distribution, a risk declared they would allocate 10% for party expenses and divide the remaining amount equally among themselves. Yukina immediately objected to his decision, saying it would be unfair to him because he had clearly contributed more in the battle. Even with that decision, he got more than he did during his hero party days. Eris replied that things would even out if they both grew stronger at the same rate. Moved by his words, the two women felt a surge of motivation and agreed to work hard together. Furthermore, Aras suggested they split lodging costs among party members and move to a larger inn. At that moment, Yukina pointed at the cot and hurriedly asked if Aras and Cilia were really sharing it, and Cilia confirmed without hesitation. She said he often clung to her so tightly while he was resting that she struggled to get free, and she remained in shock that he had actually done that while she was resting. Yukina snuggled into the soft cot and admitted it had been ages since she'd had such a lively night and energetic day. Aras affectionately touched her head, but he immediately felt a glare, and when he met Celia's eyes, he could not find words to justify his action. Jealous of Yukina, she flopped onto the cot and suddenly asked him to pet her the same way while he stood there astonished. Having no choice, he settled between them and felt their soft bodies press against him, leaving him flushed with embarrassment. The next morning, Yukina greeted him, and seeing his expression, said he didn't seem to have gotten much rest during the night. Only Aras knew why he couldn't rest comfortably. They reached the cafeteria shortly after and found a large crowd gathered around a note on the gate announcing the cafeteria was closed because of a serious shortage of ingredients. As soon as Aras stepped inside, a terrible stench immediately filled the area as they went further and found the entire stock of ingredients had spoiled, and the chef said all the food had gone bad overnight. Yukina saw the rotting food and immediately knew it was caused by a disruption in magic. Natural magic flowing through the earth could sometimes turn chaotic, and it was likely to have changed into decay magic by chance. Aras looked around the pantry and could not believe the whole stock had spoiled overnight. Ors surprised everyone by picking up a rotting apple and trying to take a bite, which left Cilia completely bewildered, and Yukina, quick to notice, suggested Cilia take a closer look. To her astonishment, the rotting apple miraculously turned into a fresh one. Aras realized he could use his repair enchantment to restore the food to its unspoiled state from the night before, and with a smooth flourish, the whole decaying area was instantly returned to its former glory. When the chef sat down, their expressions instantly lit up with pure delight. He expressed deep gratitude and asked how he could possibly thank him. Uri said some truly delicious food would be the perfect reward, but Uri's had used so much of his life energy that he staggered and struggled to stand. Cilia and Yukina moved quickly to help him. Yukina said his magic reserves had undoubtedly run dry after using such a powerful enchantment, and suggested he get proper nutrients and much-needed rest to recover quickly. St. Numadiatnid, the chef, immediately ordered his colleagues to help him prepare restorative dishes without deli ingredients. They settled at the dining table, and Yukina, a bit surprised, said that even Aras could run out of magic, while he replied modestly that he was human like them too. He begged the chef to keep his miraculous revival of the ingredients secret from others, but the chef said it was a great chance to gain widespread fame. Celia said proudly that his humility was exactly what made him so cool. Aureus replied that if the widespread magical disturbance really affected the whole area, it was probably in very bad shape, and he could not possibly revive everything alone from every angle. So the chef agreed to keep the event secret, and when they finally came out of the cafeteria, Yukina said she couldn't believe all the ingredients had spoiled at once. He also admitted that the magic disturbance was deeply unsettling. The Earth's magical rampage was seen as a sign of an approaching magical disaster, and it would likely have severe consequences. At the guild house, the entire guild was gathered before them, and the receptionist, smiling, announced that Eurus had miraculously revived the spoiled ingredients and that clear traces of enchantment magic had been found. Stunned, he could not believe that everyone had suddenly discovered his specialized enchantment magic. One member said he had heard rumors that a new enchanter would join the hero party. Eris immediately used the distraction to call that man the true enchanter, avoiding trouble for the time being. Swiftly, he turned to his party members and urged them to start looking for new requests immediately. He felt relieved that someone had taken his place in the hero party, so he would finally be free of his former party members constantly following him. Stepping inside, they were surprised to find only a few request forms on the wall and wondered whether the recent magic disturbance had caused it. Even as Eris tried to retrieve a form, they all heard it aloud. The ominous third from outside left them completely surprised. Eris pushed forward to check the commotion, but the dense crowd blocked their view. They went upstairs to watch from above, and he was absolutely horrified. A newly built gorilla dungeon stood before him, sealed by an ominous timer. If the magical barrier failed in 3 hours, monsters would overrun the whole village. Eris said with a sorrowful expression that it was the same type of dungeon that had tragically appeared in his hometown 6 years ago. The hero and reinforcements from the capital eventually put it down, but only after the entire village was destroyed. Now Eris prioritized evacuating every being because he wanted to value every life more, and he quickly made a plan to move everyone to the next village within the critical 3-hour window. When Celia and Yukina began to leave, he activated his detection magic to scan the surrounding area and increased everyone's movement speed. Right after that, a sudden lightness swept through the group and gave them the energy to sprint much faster. Stunned, Yukina asked if he had really given that powerful spell to everyone, and Eris said this level of magical strain was no problem for him. 6 years ago, he resolved that if such a tragedy ever struck again, he would stop it at any cost. The receptionist stepped out, warned them that the dungeon had appeared suddenly, and asked them to send their hunting party, knowing Ares's party would go. He said they did not want to be just a hunting party, but to act as an advanced team. Surprised by his bold request, she asked if he really intended to act alone and warned him not to be reckless even with great powers. He explained that these monsters did not operate in groups, so they had to fight enemies that moved alone, and concluded that a small elite team was much more effective than assembling a large standard hunting party. He also said he wasn't really alone, and that his trusted comrades Celia and Yukina would back him up. The receptionist told them to stay safe, while Joris ordered his members to quickly fetch all the needed potions. He hesitated before going further into the crowd to offer help. To his surprise, his former party members arrived unexpectedly, and Nardo said the civilians would follow their lead, but Yukina intervened and sharply objected that no such rule existed, and they had not yet received any specific orders from the capital. Naruto, sounding self-important, said they were in charge. Annoyed by his audacious remark, Arisk called him unbelievable for still thinking so highly of himself and pointed out they were actually the ones in the lead. Nardo retorted aggressively, accusing them of wanting to selfishly take all the credit. He added that he would head straight to the dungeon if that were the case. The other members wisely reassured Naruto there was no need to rush, and they didn't even have enough supplies yet. Undeterred, Nardo firmly ordered his comrades to advance into the dungeon. As they left, Yukina said it would be deeply embarrassing for the hero party to fall behind in clearing the dungeon, and Eris felt sorry for the new blessing mage now tasked with supporting them. Deep in the dungeon, while the hero party fought a chaotic battle with terrifying monsters, Nardo Shriek said in frustration that the damage they were taking was as severe as if they were completely defenseless. Angrily demanding to know what was happening, he was told by the new mage that he was giving his absolute all and that his enhancement magic was fully active, while Nardo instinctively said that Eurus had always done far more than he was doing now. Another member intervened, wisely advising Nardo not to argue with his comrade and sternly warning that he would get hurt if he let his guard down. United by a desperate foresheet, the party used their varied skills and magical abilities to defeat the monsters within as they fought recklessly. Nardo cornered a terrifying creature and immediately urged Crayana to use her powerful attack magic. She was already tending another injured comrade with her precious healing magic. With a powerful sweep of its massive tail, the creature hurled Nardo across the ground. Meanwhile, Cranon said, visibly strained, that they had completely run out of magical power. The new member doubted they had an antidote, since bacillus poison was a deadly toxin that acted fast and left almost no time. Carelessly, Nard let the camouflage monster's saliva drip onto his exposed hand, causing a severe reaction and rapid swelling. Desperate, he begged someone for an antidote potion, and Macrainer, concerned, said they were already out of healing potions and urged them to leave the dungeon immediately. The new mage said he would have brought more supplies if he'd known the consequences would be so severe. Soon after, the Eris party entered the dungeon with confidence, and Yukina quietly hoped the hero party would not complain when they saw them. Eris replied that they could not afford to complain. At that moment, a monstrous growl echoed through the dungeon and immediately alerted everyone. Moving further in, they found the heroes in worse condition than before and spotted a horrifying basilisk. Oris admitted they should have gone in sooner. Eros activated his magic circle and quickly fired a flame-piercing shot, sent a blazing ray streaking toward the creature, leaving it completely frozen. Celia and Yukino praised his powerful skills again, while his former party members stood speechless in awe, seeing this unfold. Prana called him unfair for sneaking out of the party and now showing off such impressive attack magic. Calmly, he echoed Nardo's harsh words, saying it was already decided, there was no room for explanation, and the firing was final. He also revealed that Flame Pearson's shot was an advanced use of blessing magic that he tried for the first time after his banishment. More importantly, pulling a crucial healing potion from his inventory slot, he said it was exactly what they desperately needed at that moment. When Nardo saw the antidote, his face lit up with overwhelming delight. This may be a silly question, but did Urs predict this situation beforehand and prepare those essential potions? The risk was simple. The gorilla dungeon was extremely isolated, magic drained quickly, and most monsters were fiercely elemental. Without enough potions, they could suffer deadly poison or paralysis, and simple healing would do little, leaving them dangerously immobile. With a firm expression, he admitted it was his very first time in this particular dungeon as well, and both the environment and its inhabitants' combat tactics were completely unfamiliar to him. It also advised them to act with foresight in everything they did. He gestured for them to move forward and clearly indicated the direction of the exit portal. Nardo surprised him by addressing him directly, speaking earnestly and stressing that he was truly counting on him. Urs had never imagined he'd hear such words from Nardo and realized Nardo must have finally faced harsh reality to be so unexpectedly honest. In a resolute tone, Urs told him to take care of everything. As they left, Celia asked with eager curiosity if Urs had already predicted the exact types and traits of the monsters in that dungeon, and Urs apologized to them both for involving them in such a dangerous situation. He was deeply concerned that the once world-renowned hero party had fallen into this state. Yukina grumbled that they were so focused on appearances they couldn't even protect their own teammates. Urs replied calmly that it was still his old stomping grounds. Hearing that, Yukina was surprised to learn he really was from that hero party, and Urs realized he had never told her before. Immediately, he apologized to Yukina for anything in his past that might have made her uncomfortable. Calmly, she said she felt relieved. He was an outsider like her, and she liked him just the way he was, not just because he was a hero. Eris's face flushed at the words, and she quickly clarified that she meant it as a person. Suddenly, Celia stepped between them, making both jump in surprise. He pointed ahead and said there were many doors at their destination. As they moved past so many doors, Silly asked if it was okay for them to quickly open any of them, but Orisa shared her opinion. Activating his area scan skill, he immediately detected a swarm of dangerous monsters beyond the doors. Yukina reasoned that they definitely would not be able to make it in time if they opened every single door, so she told them to move ahead for the time being. They walked a little farther and found an imposing door with multiple keyholes. They realized the dungeon's boss monster was deeper inside the formidable barrier, and they would need many keys to access the door. With so many keyholes, it was clear the keys were hidden behind the doors, one in each. Silly told Alv they had no choice but to defeat the monsters inside each of the gates, and as they moved toward it, Haris hastily stopped them. He accidentally pulled Yukina's belt. She flushed and immediately warned him not to hold her there. With 20 keys to collect, Aris said they had no time for a lengthy process. The straightforward method wouldn't work. It felt pointless to ask about a hidden way to unlock those doors. Aris explained it was much simpler than they had imagined. Forming a powerful magic circle, he unleashed a massive blast of fire at the imposing door, blasting it open instantly with sheer force. Celia and Yukina were bewildered by his action, since they had not expected him to rely on such brute force, and when the door opened, a formidable, terrifying dragon loomed before them. Without wasting another second, Aristocler drew the dragon's attention to himself. Swiftly instruct Celia to attack from behind and have Yukina support them expertly from the rear. The dragon's massive jaw opened, and a fierce blast of fire swept the area as Eris moved behind it and fired a precise, piercing shot of flame. A formidable beast, but it didn't leave a single scratch on its incredibly tough scales. Following orders, Silly stepped out from behind, and she delivered a precise strike to the monster with her strong sword. However, as Eris complimented her skills, the dragon seized the chance and captured her while she was distracted. Panic-stricken, Eris readied herself for another desperate attack, but Yukina's sharp voice ordered Celia to dodge. Unleashing her powerful attack magic at the dragon, as Celia was rescued and the Dradenlay was injured. When the beast lay briefly still on the ground, Aruz seized the moment to lunge and strike with precise aim, and the formidable dragon was finally defeated. News of their victory spread across the area. They stood outside, relieved to have at last cleared the dungeon. Eras cast his gentle healing and enchantment on them at the same time. Yukina said proudly that it was undoubtedly the fastest time in history for Eris to clear such a challenging dungeon so swiftly. With a warm smile, he said he hadn't done it alone, and that the three of them had achieved it together as a team. He admitted that without Silly's precise attack on the Driggan scale scenes, he would not have noticed its weakness. Without Yukina's timely help, Cilia admitted she would have been torn to shreds. With a stutter, Yukina said she hadn't done anything special and had only attacked from behind, but Iris still praised her for the much-needed help, which made her cheeks flush with embarrassment. He stressed that in a dungeon where magic drained power quickly, few adventurers could deliver effective magic attacks from that distance. He gently took her hand and cast a healing spell as she shyly offered heartfelt thanks. Envious of their bond, Cilia hurried between them and grabbed Aris tightly, clinging in pain and urgently needing his help. Yukina couldn't help giggling at the party's lively energy. Silently, she spoke to her late parents, thinking in her heart that she could really get along with these people. Just then something appeared out of nowhere, and she sweetly thanked both her mothers, Celia and Yukina, for allowing her to come outside since it seemed everyone had been evacuated from the village. She joked that she could finally steal anything she wanted, but Celia quickly scolded her for thinking that way. Ares also found it odd that someone who seemed like an innocent child would have such self-absorbed and dangerous thoughts. Seeing them standing so close, she teased that auras had stolen her mother's hearts, but he blushed and explained their closeness was simply an efficient way to speed up magical recovery. She told him it was fine for Cilia, but extremely rude to Yukina. Her face was bright red, but he told himself it was just fatigue from using magic. At that moment, Yukina turned around abruptly and told him she was fine now, while Eurus told Sulf there really was some distance between him and Yukina. Cilia said he was helplessly oblivious. He told himself that teaming up with Yukina was only about their shared goals. After clearing the notorious gorilla dungeon that day, they took another crucial step toward reclaiming a peaceful world. He realized he had to keep growing with Celia and Yukina to ultimately defeat the powerful Demon King. Meanwhile, the royal guards spoke quietly in the village corner, debating whether the hero party should have retreated, while others urged reporting everything to the palace right away. The scene shifted to the royal palace of the Male Kingdom, where the respected king, Floyd's Male, suggested they appoint a new ideal hero who would be truly unique to their nation. The minister countered that even if they were the Alliance's heroes, finding adventurers who could surpass them would be a monumental challenge. Floyd confidently said it was already proven that such extraordinary people existed. 3 days after defeating the dangerous gorilla dungeon, the Horus group walked into the busy market, where the shop owner immediately recognized them as the heroes who had recently overcome the crisis. Leaning closer, she asked if Aris was the former hero and if she was supposed to keep it secret, which made Aris realize that almost everyone already knew about his past identity. Cilia asked for 4 loaves of bread, and when the shop owner saw her, she was clearly impressed and called her a beauty. Common question was if she was Eros' girlfriend, which left Eros visibly flustered, but Cilia calmly denied it and proudly introduced herself as the group's sword Sane. Hearing this, the lady generously gave her the whole bag of bread instead of just 4, and Cilius's face immediately lit up with delight. Another vendor chimed in, claiming the village had miraculously come back to life thanks to their heroic efforts, and even the fruit seemed juicier. Yukina, ever the scholar, explained that closing the dungeon had greatly stabilized the local magic flow, and the vendor praised her deep knowledge and asked who she was. Eris stepped forward and proudly introduced her as the sage, saying she had played a key part in the group's recent success, which delighted the vendor. He quickly offered her his juiciest fruits as a token of appreciation, and soon shopkeepers and vendors across the market showered them with gifts and warm thanks. Both Cilia and Yukina clearly enjoyed the attention and appreciation they were getting. In addition, a shopkeeper mentioned. Nardo's group admitted they had marched through the village confidently, but then retreated quickly when their help was needed, and another person said Harris's party was much more reliable. The whole market warmly thanked them for their timely, decisive help. When they finally pushed through the huge crowd, he sighed in relief. That led Yukina to ask if he was tired. He said he'd never had that kind of experience before, so he wasn't used to public admiration, and when they arrived at the guild house, the receptionist immediately apologized for calling them abruptly while they were supposed to be resting, but Yura said they had rested enough over the past 3 days and asked about the urgent matter she had called him about. She said she had an important letter for Aris and told him to go to the inner room. Aris realized then that his past as a hero was public knowledge, and while the receptionist led them, Celia said the area was usually off-limits. The receptionist said it was their private office. She told the group that after they finished the dungeon quest quickly, a letter had arrived the day before from the capital. Given how fast it arrived, it was clearly from a carrier pigeon and of the highest importance to them. When Eris asked who had sent it, she revealed it was from King Floyd of the Male Kingdom, leaving him truly astonished. When he glanced at the letter, it clearly stated that the king personally congratulated them on their swift, decisive conquest of the dungeon, and the letter announced the impending dissolution of the allied hero party and the creation of an independent hero party for the Male Kingdom. Most importantly, it announced that the new hero party's respected leader would be Eris, full-raced, and self. Cilia and Yukina were overjoyed to hear this, convinced their extraordinary dungeon exploits had finally been officially recognized. Self also appeared, smiling, and said that although she didn't seem to know much about the matter, it sounded impressive. The receptionist said it made perfect sense given Ero's incredible accomplishments, but being nominated personally by the king was truly a remarkable feat. However, Cilia said she was confused about why they had to form a whole new party, instead of just adding Ares to the existing one. Yukina explained that the current party was only a coalition, essentially a multinational army funded by neighboring countries. With the prolonged absence of major battles against the formidable Demon King, more countries became increasingly reluctant to provide funding. This caused a severe funding shortfall that led to fewer talented adventurers gathering. Worse still, the situation had deteriorated sharply since a guerrilla dungeon appeared in Aris's hometown 6 years ago. Because natural disasters could strike anywhere, countries prioritized disaster response over the subjugation of the Demon King and began investing heavily in their immediate needs. The receptionist also said the allied hero party was abandoned after their recent retreat from the dungeon, and the king had clearly decided to form an independent hero party solely to protect the kingdom. Silly finally grasped the gravity of the situation and proudly declared that Ares' time had come, while Ares hesitantly called it a very positive interpretation. His ultimate goal remained to defeat the formidable Demon King, and joining the hero party would be only a temporary detour. Yet one respondent said the old hero party's bitter memories were incredibly hard to forget. The receptionist noticed and asked if something was troubling him. To her surprise, Ors asked whether he could actually refuse the prestigious nomination to the new hero party. The receptionist pressed on to confirm he meant refusing it as leader. He clarified he meant becoming a hero in general, which left everyone in the room in stunned silence. Visibly shaken, she stammered that refusing a royal decree was unheard of, while Celia and Yukina pleaded with him, saying it would be a huge waste to refuse such an honor, and that he should still take part despite his obvious hesitation. Eris could not figure out how to explain his complicated feelings to everyone. Meanwhile, inside the grand audience hall of the Male Kingdom, Galeas Sheffield, Farrah Forrest, Sils Astria, and Miguel Bro were formally appointed as the new distinguished heroes of the Male Kingdom by the king personally. Next, Floyd raised the issue of the party leader. Galeas quickly reassured him that he would handle it easily, having led an A-rank party for years and confident in his leadership. Floyd calmly said the leader had already been chosen decisively, though he wasn't there at the moment. Galeas immediately apologized for misspeaking and asked who the leader was, and Floyd revealed it was Eris Falry. Galeas immediately realized he was the skilled enchanter from the former hero party, and the discovery clearly surprised him. Meanwhile, Floyd cheerfully remarked that, though it hadn't been publicly announced yet, he had heard Auras had single-handedly conquered the gorilla dungeon. Floyd proudly said that even after stepping down as a hero, Aris kept working to save people, showing extraordinary spirit and inner strength, and was truly deserving of that title. Galeas broke into a cold sweat as he realized the hero party leader held immense authority. He understood that in the king's name, the leader would be granted overwhelming authority and influence both inside and outside the party structure. Galeas couldn't understand why he wasn't chosen. Everyone acknowledged his prowess, and for years he had led many parties to success. He found it utterly disrespectful to come to that grand stage only to work under a mere kid named Arrest. He was certain that if he had reached the dungeon first, he would have been chosen as leader instead of Russ, and he wondered whether the party leader could change later. Floyd said although he was not considering it right now, the topic might come up in court discussions every few years. He announced that Aris was due to arrive in the capital in a few days to officially join them, and ordered everyone to remain in Stamby until then. Galeas grew more resentful, convinced the king was just using the previous hero party's retreat as an excuse and was now overestimating Ares a bit too much. Worse, he thought bitterly that if Aris had not been around, the king would have had no choice but to appoint him. Leaving the capital, he made a dark vow to ensure Euras was out of the way, even though he didn't yet know what kind of man Euras truly was.